Hey everybody, what's going on? It is James here, and I wanted to sit down today and shoot another market update video. There's just a lot going on in the market. There's still a lot to unpack, a lot of different viewpoints to consider, and also that last video I did, the sound quality was just terrible. I had mentioned I got a new Blue Yeti microphone, which is actually a step down from what I had, but everybody swears by these things, so hopefully I can get it dialed in. Last video was bad sound quality-wise. I'm hoping this one's a little better. We'll keep working with it until we hopefully get back to the quality of that other microphone I was using. So yeah, overall, first chart I want to take a look at is one that I don't normally talk about. I don't watch it as closely. I really like watching Bitcoin versus the QQQ because the QQQ is the tech market and Bitcoin, of course, is a tech asset. But I also, it is interesting and it is worth keeping an eye on Bitcoin versus the broader market itself. So for example, the RUA, which is, encompasses 97 to 98% of all U.S. stocks. And that's what this is. This is measuring the price of Bitcoin versus the value of the RUA. And, it's funny how biases kind of get in the way. I shot that last video, and here come the trolls. I will freely admit that I had an overly bearish bias in 2020, and that was, of course, a direct result of COVID. And that's the reason that my bear bias was so strong. I was, bearish looking for those $4,000 lows, which happened. But I continued to be bearish because of COVID and what I thought it meant for the economy and everything. I didn't anticipate the government, making these historic moves of, the lowest interest rates in history and, giving out trillions of dollars in stimulus packages. So they see me post these charts that look bearish in nature and they accuse me of cherry picking. But you've got to realize that nothing about this chart is cherry picked. Yes, over here it looks bearish, like a bearish retest. But back here, it was bullish, right? You take this big O wick, and if it's a wick, it's demand, right? When you come back down, it should act as demand. That's exactly what happened. It came back down in the summer of 2021, and we got that big push up off of demand because all the people that didn't buy when it was over here. When it came back down, they felt like it was a good price, and so they bought, and up it went. But when you fall below that, of course, demand flips to supply, which is what I talked about in the last video. And so, if you look, if we consider these tails our little supply zone through here, and pull it over, hey, right? Just like here, it bounced up. Technically speaking, you normally get a bounce down. It's what's called a bearish retest. Okay, and until you get through that zone, it's hard to get bullish. So that's something to keep an eye on. That again, that's Bitcoin versus the RUA. If we take a look at Bitcoin versus the QQQ, it looks similar in nature, right? This is that market cycle chart. We're not going to talk about this a lot because I talked about it in the last video. But again, this whole box here is what I would consider supply. It was eating up into it, and then it got shoved back down so far, right? Just so far. There's about 10 and a half hours left in this 3-day candle, and so far it's leaving behind a pretty nasty wick, which is a sign that there was supply there. Doesn't guarantee that it's going to fail, but at the very least there was supply there, which is, again, that's what traders are going off of. They're looking for those areas of supply and demand, and then they're taking trades accordingly. When you have supply, you're usually looking for shorts. When you have demand, you're usually looking for longs. Okay, those are on shorter time frames. I'm not saying overall long time frames. I'm not a huge fan of shorting Bitcoin. That's one thing that's always funny to me about the people that get upset with my viewpoints. This doesn't benefit me. The market being low like this doesn't benefit me in any way. Right? I'm not short Bitcoin. So if it goes down, I don't make any money. I would just like to see the market do something. So I can get some more money in play. Other than that, it's all about short-term trading for me, And some people might say, well, if you're bearish, and I'm not necessarily all that bearish, but if you're bearish, why wouldn't you short it? Why would I? Where's the meat on that bone, right? Bitcoin is already so low that there's just not that much meat on a short bone, okay? If Bitcoin is sitting at, 25,000, 24,000, whatever it is here, put it on a weekly chart, if I get short here, how low do I think this thing's going to go realistically? Even if it does go back down to 12,000, that's just not a very big move. So that doesn't excite me to try to get short at 24 and right at 12. Not very, very exciting. And some people say, wait a minute, you talked about these possibilities of going lower. Sure, but, how do you ride that trade? I mean, you've got all these zones back here where even if it does go to 3,000 or 4,000 and things got really bad, which I think is, possible, maybe not all that likely, but possible. Even if it goes all the way down there, it's not like it's going to go straight there. Chances are it would grind there. It's very hard to ride a grinding trade, especially when you got to go through all this area here. All of this is going to present probably moves. Who knows what it's going to do all through here if it moves down. We're really just in a range. And the thing about ranges is they can break out either way. So this breaks out to the north and starts putting in, okay, so it's consolidating, right? Now, listen, after you get a move down like this, like boom, boom, there's your move down. What happens when you move sideways? There's two possibilities here, right? One possibility is this is redistribution, in which case you break south and you go lower. The other possibility is this is actually accumulation, which is what happened through here, and you start your new markup phase, right? Your new wick-off cycle where you start marking up. It is possible that this is accumulation. I think it's really important to understand that. Like, no one has this crystal ball. I say that, and some people just kind of think it's like some kind of disclaimer. It's not. Like, this is really serious stuff. Like, I don't know which way this is going to go, okay? It could be that this is accumulation. I find it hard to believe given the overall environment that we're in. Now, that being said, I think it's important to note that we have this bank situation going on, and the government is now apparently going to be injecting trillions of dollars to save these banks. Could that act as another round of QE? I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe that actually ends up propping up the stock market. Stocks start rallying. And if stocks start rallying, then Bitcoin being a correlated risk-on asset, it would be extremely likely that Bitcoin would rally with the stock market. In which case, a year from now, we would look back and say, well, duh, that was accumulation. Everybody should have seen it. Now, if that doesn't happen and it breaks south and goes lower, then people will look back in a year and say, well, duh, that was redistribution. We should have all known it, right? So right now, bulls will want to compare this to this. I see the similarities, but bears can also turn around and do the same thing. Bears can turn around and say, okay, well, yeah, but, this is no different from all of this, right? That looked like accumulation too. A lot of people back here in 2018 were calling this accumulation, saying the bottom was in, and then this was going to go back up. I remember because I was calling for $3,200 Bitcoin and getting shit on for it. Just like I got shit on for calling for $4,000 Bitcoin, right, in August of 2019. But the reality is, both of those are viable. One possibility, again, is that this is redistribution that will break out lower. One possibility is it's accumulation that will break out higher. You got to watch for the breakout. That's really what you got to do. If it breaks out south, especially if it breaks out, comes up like this and kisses it for a bearish retest, that's, could be some short-term, short positions worth taking there. If it breaks out to the north side and retests it, it could be that it's time to get long on Bitcoin and a type of position that you might want to ride for some foreseeable future. Let's take a look real quick at the US 100 or the QQQ. I think this is really important to point out to people, okay? I haven't seen anybody talking about it, but that's mainly because I don't really watch what other people are doing. When you look at the QQQ, okay, I'll take this off log. So you have this major downtrend, and then you have this sideways range form. It put in a double bottom here, left behind some pretty nice demand tails, moved up, and now it's consolidating in this, what looks to be a bull flag. And what's interesting about this bull flag is it's coming down and basically retesting the neckline of this double bottom. It's sitting right on top of its 200-week moving average. And overall, if you put some Fibonacci levels on there from the low in 2020 to the high in 2021, it's actually coming down right into that golden pocket, that 61.8. Remember, I used to talk about the hodler slow crushing zone. If it gets in this zone, on a balance, it's a good place to look for shorts oftentimes. Well, the same is true in reverse. When a market pulls back to that zone in an uptrend like this and then pulls back, this is often a really good place to look for long positions. So when you take into consideration that you have the golden pocket sitting there, you have a double bottom sitting there, you have a 200-week moving average sitting there, and you have what appears to be a bull flag sitting there, it is possible, again, if the fundamentals don't get in the way, it's possible that this is a bull flag with a target of around $338 on the QQQ. That's about a 10% move or a 12% move up, maybe even 13%. Let's take a look. So from where it's at, it'd be about almost 14%. Again, think about that. If the QQQ moves up 13 or 14%, it is highly likely that Bitcoin has a correlated move with it. So I think right now, for anybody to be overly bullish is dangerous because of the fundamentals, right? But I also think for anybody to be overly bearish is also dangerous because the technicals don't look that bad, right? If you're just going purely by technical analysis, they don't look bad. So yeah, the fundamentals do look bad. These higher interest rates and the quantitative tightening environment, all these things, they do look bad, but the technical analysis doesn't. Now, if you zoom out, yeah, we still have, there's a lot there that we can unpack, and I've talked about in previous videos, so I don't want to go too deep into it. But it would be very interesting if this ended up doing something like this. Have this be a giant inverse head and shoulders. That would be super interesting, right? And it would be more like this. And it could happen. Alright, I'll wrap this video up there. Please remember, I am just some guy. I'm sitting in a spare bedroom, and that means that nothing in the video is financial advice. You should always go out and do your own due diligence and seek out professional financial advice from a licensed financial advisor for making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, the stock market, precious metals, forex, or any other tradable asset. This is James with Crypto Common Sense, reminding you to please trade safe. And of course, don't forget, if you haven't already, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more updates.